Hey everybody, I'm Ruksar. I'm a PhD scholar and an agronomist, and I am so excited to welcome you to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the totally fascinating, incredibly dynamic world that's right beneath our feet. I mean, we literally walk on it every single day, but how often do we actually stop to consider just how complex and, well, vital the ground we stand on truly is? Seriously, think about it for a second. What exactly is keeping the world's plants alive? It's so easy to look at a sprawling forest or a thriving garden and just see the greenery up above, right? But to an agronomist like me, the real magic, the actual vital life support system, is completely hidden below. We kind of need to shift our perspective here and realize that the ground isn't just dirt.
So let's establish exactly what we're dealing with. Officially speaking, soil is the upper, unconsolidated part of the Earth's crust that supports plant growth, and it does this by doing two absolutely critical things: providing anchorage so plants don't just, blow over in the wind, and delivering essential nutrients directly to their roots. And here's the absolute game changer for anyone looking to grow anything. Identifying your specific soil type is paramount to unlocking healthy plant growth, because as you'll see, not all soil is created equal.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, sizing up the big three: sand, silt, and clay. To truly understand how soil works, I want you to kind of use your imagination and shrink down with me to the microscopic level. We're going to start with the largest, coarsest particle of the big three, which is sand. Just think about these dimensions. A grain of sand ranges from 4.75 millimeters down to 0.074 millimeters. Down at this microscopic scale, these are absolute boulders. They're finer than gravel, sure, but significantly coarser than the other particles we're going to look at today.
And what happens when those large particles group together? Well, if your soil contains more than 85% of these sand-sized particles, you've got yourself what we call a sandy soil. Because the particles are so big, there's just a lot of empty space between them. This means sandy soil possesses excellent drainage characteristics. Water literally just rushes right through it. So it's absolutely ideal for specific crops that hate having wet feet. Think watermelons or ground nuts.
Okay, let's move to the next level and see how this builds. We're shrinking down again, and this time we're looking at silt. Now we're talking about particles between 0.0625 millimeters and 0.0039 millimeters. We are getting very tiny now. Because these particles are so fine and light, silt is incredibly mobile. It can be easily transported by water in rivers and canals, and it's even fine enough to just be carried away by the wind. Now, what's really fascinating here is the origin story of silt. When you hold a rich handful of silty soil, you are actually holding ancient pulverized rock. Silt originates primarily from hard crystalline minerals like quartz and from feldspars. To give you an idea of just how common this is, feldspars are rock-forming minerals that remarkably make up about 41% of the Earth's continental crust by weight. Crazy, right? All right, time to shrink down one last time, right down to the microscopic level of clay. These particles are unbelievably small, measuring less than 0.02 millimeters. You literally cannot see an individual clay particle with the naked eye, but their tiny size dictates completely unique behaviors. Technically, a clay soil is one that contains less than 30% of these fine clay particles. But man, do they dominate the soil's personality. Clay is fascinating because it physically swells when it gets wet and then shrinks when it dries out. And because it holds on to so much water, it takes a much longer time to warm up in the spring or summer compared to sand. Oh, and ironically, despite feeling really dense and heavy, clay soil structure can be easily damaged when it's dug up or heavily walked on. So, let's quickly compare our two extremes. On one side, we have sand with its excellent drainage. On the other side, we have clay, which is pretty notorious for poor drainage. But hey, it's not all bad news for clay. Because clay holds on to moisture so stubbornly, a period of drought is actually far less damaging to clay soils than it is to sandy, fast-draining soils. It's all a trade-off. Moving right along to Section 2, Nature's Unique Recipes: peat, loam, and chalk. We've covered the individual mineral particles, but nature rarely keeps things pure. Let's look at some unique biological mixtures, starting with peat. Unlike sand, silt, or clay, which are born from rocks, peat is born from life. It's basically an accumulation of partially decayed vegetation and organic matter. You'll only find this unique characteristic in specific, often waterlogged areas known as peatlands, bogs, mires, moors, or muskegs, where the annual rate of biomass production is just incredibly high. And the ecosystem here? It is simply marvelous. Peatlands are actually the most efficient carbon sink we have on the planet. It works in this beautiful natural equilibrium. As the deep layers of peat slowly decay, they release CO2.
But the plants actively growing on the top layer of the peatland capture that exact CO2, drawing it right back down into the system. It's a perfectly balanced, self-sustaining loop. Next up, we arrive at what most gardeners consider the absolute holy grail: loamy soil. Loam is the ultimate compromise. By weight, its ideal mineral composition is about a 40-40-20 split, so that's 40% sand, 40% silt, and 20% clay. This highly specific recipe borrows the drainage of sand, the nutrient retention of silt, and the moisture-holding power of clay. It creates a perfectly balanced home for plant roots.
Now, of course, out in the real world, these proportions can vary to a degree, and those slight variations result in specific subtypes of loam. Depending on which particle slightly dominates the mix, you might find yourself working with a sandy loam, a silty loam, a clay loam, or even a silty clay loam. As an agronomist, knowing exactly which variation you have tells you precisely how to manage your watering and fertilizer schedules. It's a total game changer.
Finally, we definitely have to talk about chalky or lime-rich soils. It's easy to spot because of the visible lumps of white chalky stones mixed right in. Those stones are largely made up of calcium carbonate. Because of all that calcium carbonate, chalky soils are very alkaline, typically sitting at a pH between 7.1 and 8.0. You have to choose your plants very carefully here because acid-loving plants will absolutely refuse to grow in this.
And here is a quick warning from me to you. If you have chalky soil, be very careful when it rains. The moment chalky soil gets wet, it transforms into a completely sticky, unworkable mess. Seriously, trying to dig or plant in wet chalk is an exercise in pure frustration. Just wait for it to dry out.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 3, Master Your Soil. We've looked at the microscopic dimensions of sand and clay, the ancient mineral origins of silt, and the global carbon-sinking power of peat. Now let's bring it all back down to your own backyard, your farm, or even just your potted plants. The absolutely crucial point I want you to take away from this explainer is this: every single soil type has distinct benefits and severe limitations. Your first step is always to identify the dominant particle size you are working with. Once you know that, you'll understand its drainage habits and its pH limits. Working with those limits rather than fighting against them is how you finally provide the proper anchorage and nutrients to truly support healthy plant growth.
Which leaves me with one final question for you today. Think about the trees in your neighborhood, the grass in your local park, or the veggies growing in your garden. Do you actually know what they're anchored in? I challenge you to step outside today, pick up a handful of earth, and really examine it. You might just be surprised by the incredibly complex world you find hidden right there in your palm. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy growing.